Right now, congressional leadership and the heads of the House and Senate intelligence committees, known as the Gang of Eight, are all being briefed on the latest intelligence that prompted the Trump administration, they say, to claim an increased threat from Iran. According to the New York Times, new images obtained by the Trump administration show Iranian forces loading missiles onto boats, raising White House fears of attacks on U.S. forces, interests, and allies in the region. This all comes as sources tell CNN the president is growing a bit irritated at the perception the National Security Advisor John Bolton is drawing the United States into war with Tehran. As CNN's Pamela Brown now reports, the president isn't the only one concerned about Bolton's hawkish views.
But certainly, I hope not.
President Trump today taking a new approach to deal with the Iranian regime.
Can Switzerland be helpful, Mr. President, in diplomacy?
Meeting with the Swiss president today in hopes of creating a diplomatic back channel with Iran to diffuse escalating tensions.
We'd like to see some behavioral change come from them. We're going to continue the maximum pressure, and that, as the president has said, if they take action, they're not going to like what he does in response. They're not going to be happy.
A top European security official says U.S. allies are closely watching the Trump administration's next move, adding National Security Advisor John Bolton's hawkish reputation on Iran, including regime change, is a concern. Sources tell CNN the president has grown irritated with the perception that Bolton and others are leading him into a war with Iran, expressing it on Twitter today, saying, "I make a decisive and final decision," a message echoed by his press secretary.
The president is the ultimate decision maker, and he's going to take all of the information and intelligence that's given to him, and he'll make the decision that he thinks is best to keep Americans safe. It's that simple.
People familiar also say Trump is privately complaining that if Bolton had it his way, the U.S. would be at war on multiple fronts, while publicly saying,
John's very good. John is he has strong views on things, but that's okay. I actually temper John, which is pretty amazing, isn't it?
The president has also publicly expressed frustration with his administration's lack of direct dialogue with the Iranian regime. According to people familiar with the matter, last week the White House even gave the Swiss a special phone number to give to Iran for direct negotiations with the U.S. But publicly, Iran says it isn't interested. The Ayatollah said Iran doesn't want war and that negotiating with the U.S. is poisonous. Trump retorting on Twitter, "I'm sure that Iran will want to talk soon." And even allies of the president on Capitol Hill, like Senator Lindsey Graham, are expressing frustration about the administration's lack of information sharing about Iran, saying, Graham, for this instance, saying that he believes there are a lot of senators who feel like they're in the dark. That frustration may be appeased next week, Jake, when all senators are briefed by national security officials, which follows this afternoon's briefing of the Gang of Eight. Jake.
All right, Pamela Brown at the White House, thanks so much. Let's dive into this with my experts. Karen, let me start with you. The president shifting from "I'm ready to deploy troops" to counter Iran to now saying, "Let's hit the pause button and see if we can negotiate." Take a listen to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
I like what I hear from the president, that he has no appetite for this, even though some of his supporters are rattling sabers.
Do you like what you're hearing from President Trump?
I do, although it's hard to know what to trust from this president, as you know, and his press secretary, given their penchant for lying. Look, I think Trump underestimated how strongly the pushback would be, given not just John Bolton's penchant for regime change in Iran, or his that known desire, but this is, John Bolton, we know, was part of leading us into war in Iraq. There are a lot of people in the national security community, a lot of Democrats who do not trust John Bolton. So I think, we've all been pleased to see, ironically, both the president and, frankly, the message coming from Iran that the goal is to avoid this. Here's the other thing, Jake. I think the president probably realized this would be detrimental to his hopes in 2020. Getting us into a war with Iran, I think, would be devastating, because I don't think there's anybody in America who believes at this moment that it probably couldn't be avoided with some form of negotiation, which is not Trump's strong suit.
David Urban, take a look at this tweet from Democratic Senator and presidential candidate Amy Klobuchar. She wrote, "To the President, NSA Advisor Bolton, Secretary Pompeo, the authorization for the use of military force that Congress passed in 2001 against al-Qaeda does not authorize a war against Iran, saber rattling and risking the lives of our men and women while eschewing diplomacy is not leadership. What's your reaction?
Yeah, well, I would say that perhaps Senator Klobuchar didn't see the president standing there with the Swiss president today. That looks a lot like diplomacy to me, Jake. I hear what Karen's saying about the national security advisor, and the president himself acknowledges that frequently, Ambassador Bolton's a little more hawkish than he is in his positions, and the president knows it and balances it out. I think, talking to the Swiss president, it clearly indicates this president wants to talk. He said, I hope we're not going to go to war. Unfortunately, the same is not echoed back by the Ayatollahs you hear saying, it's poisonous to enter into talks with the Americans, and so it's somewhat troubling. But this president doesn't seem to be rushing headlong into any type of conflict whatsoever.
Sarah Murray, take a listen to White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders discussing the decision-making process in the White House.
And the president wants to hear all viewpoints, but ultimately it's going to come down. There's only one person that was elected to make those decisions, and that was the president. He'll be the one that decides. There's only one agenda here, and it's the president's.
Sarah, you covered this White House. Do you have a sense of how decisions get made?
Well, I mean, look, there are some days, I think, when, pundits stand around and they're horrified because President Trump is not listening to the advisors around him. And I think there are other days, and today might be one of them, where people are actually pleased that he's not listening to the advisors around him. We knew that John Bolton was hawkish when he went into the White House. I think that freaked people out when he got this job. And so, no, it's not a surprise that the president does, hear advice from some advisors and say, well, I've already decided this is how I feel about this issue, or I don't think you're making a good enough argument. Or in the case of this situation, he could have looked at John Bolton and saying, are you kidding me? Are you trying to sink my 2020 prospects? There's no way we're going to go to war with Iran. So I do think this is indicative of how decisions can be made in the White House. There are some times when advisors can shift the president's thinking, but in a lot of cases, we've seen the president get advice from the advisors around him and say, you know what, I'm not going to do that.
And Nia, of course, the president's mind seems to change often based on what he sees on cable television.
I think that's right. His mind changes based on cable television, based on maybe something he hears from Putin, for instance, as we saw in the case of what happened with Venezuela. I think one of the things will be interesting to see is John Bolton's fate here. I mean, we've seen a number of advisors sort of get a little too big for their britches in terms of this administration, and their days aren't long for the world. It might take a little while, so we'll see. I mean, I think when you think about what happened here with Iran and and John Bolton seeming to be sort of the face of American policy in terms of Iran, and also what happened with Venezuela, a bit of a mess there too, overestimating the kind of coup that was no coup in the end. It'll be interesting to see how long John Bolton lasts, if he is in any danger of leaving this White House and being sort of expelled in the way that we've seen other foreign policy folks like Tillerson end up souring on this administration, and the president is souring on them. So we'll see how that ends.
Yeah, it's a long list. Tillerson, yeah. McMaster,
right, exactly.
Mattis.
David, go ahead. I would say I think Bolton lasts longer than Maduro does. That's my prediction.
We'll see. Karen Finney, take a listen to the top Democrat on the Foreign Relations Committee, Senator Bob Menendez, speaking just a few minutes ago with my colleague Jim Sciutto.
This is the most opaque administration I've ever dealt with over 4 presidencies. Right now, we're being asked to make foreign policy and national security decisions while flying in the blindly.
Your reaction?
Well, look, I think the meeting with the Gang of 8 is critically important, and I think making sure that both Democrats and Republicans in Congress have all of the information that they need. And again, this point about, war powers that Klobuchar was talking about is critically important. Anytime we are, anywhere near going up to this line, it is really important. This is when these separation of powers, we've been talking about these issues with regard to the Mueller report and, tax records and those sorts of things. But this is a fundamental task of Congress. And I think the American people are going to stand firmly behind their ability to rein this president in and make sure that if we, God forbid, go to war or have any aggressive action, that everyone is confident in the intelligence. And again, John Bolton is not someone to be trusted in that environment.
All right, everyone stick around. We're going to keep talking. Republicans say President Trump is exonerated by the special counsel. Democrats say they need to see more of the report. But what if both parties are fundamentally wrong about the Mueller report? And then millions of U.S. taxpayer dollars meant to help American farmers reportedly ending up in the hands of foreigners who are allegedly corrupt. That's ahead. Stay with us.
crispy chicken, pit smoked ham, and luau sauce on a Sweet King's Hawaiian bun? It's like we're trying to get you to try it or something.
Arby's, we have the meats.
For sandwiches.
Can't take no piece about this.
To start your investment plan, find an advisor at massmutual.com. This is the couple who wanted to get away, who used Expedia to book the hotel that led to the ride, which took them to the place where they discovered that sometimes a little downtime can lift you right up. Flights, hotels, cars, activities, Expedia, everything you need to go.
Jen and I are obviously a bit behind converting the den into a nursery.
Hey, I know a good contractor who could probably help you guys out.
Can you verify their credentials, check their customer reviews, give us some additional quotes? Oh, and our AC's been making...
You can't expect your neighbors to do everything HomeAdvisor can. So just ask HomeAdvisor.
Diaper duty. It's not the highlight of fatherhood, but I'd rather be here with my little man than anywhere with migraine. I am here, and I aim to say that more.
Aimovig, a preventive treatment for migraine in adults, reduces the number of monthly migraine days. For some, that number can be cut in half or more. The most common side effects are pain, redness or swelling at the injection site, and constipation. Aim to be there more. Talk to your doctor about Aimovig.
Apollo 11, your go for separation. Watch my target. Watch. 40 feet down, 2.5. Picking up the set. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Few things change the way we see everything. TV is making history again. QLED 8K.
Billions of mouths, billions of problems. Morning breath, garlic breath, stinky breath? There's a TheraBreath for you. TheraBreath Fresh Breath Oral Rinse instantly fights all types of bad breath and works for 24 hours, so you can breathe easy. There's TheraBreath at Walmart.
I'm mildly obsessed with numbers. So I started with the stats regarding my moderate to severe plaque psoriasis. Like how Humira has been prescribed to over 300,000 patients. And how many patients saw clear or almost clear skin in just 4 months. The kind of clearance that can last. Humira targets and blocks a specific source of inflammation that contributes to symptoms. Numbers are great, and seeing clear skin is pretty awesome too. That's what I call a body of proof.
Humira can lower your ability to fight infections. Serious and sometimes fatal infections, including tuberculosis and cancers, including lymphoma, have happened, as have blood, liver, and nervous system problems, serious allergic reactions, and new or worsening heart failure. Tell your doctor if you've been to areas where certain fungal infections are common, and if you've had TB, hepatitis B, are prone to infections, or have flu-like symptoms or sores. Don't start Humira if you have an infection.
Want more proof? Ask your dermatologist about Humira. This is my body of proof.
Now that we're banking with Chime, we get paid up to 2 days early with direct deposit.
And there are no hidden fees, so it's way easier to stay on top of our money.
And do more of the things we love.
Yeah, more of the things we love.
Friendship Express coming on through. Yeah, keep moving, buddy. Hey, it's good to be here. Right? I know, I didn't know I'd be here. But then I saw you guys on social media.
Start banking with Chime today at chime.com.
The politics lead now. The House Judiciary Chair says he's still trying to negotiate to get the special counsel Robert Mueller to testify, but the Attorney General claims he's not the reason for the holdup. Attorney General Bill Barr telling the Wall Street Journal, quote, "It's Bob's call whether he wants to testify." I want to bring in Walter Dellinger. He served as both Solicitor General and head of the Office of Legal Counsel for the Justice Department in the Clinton era. He now argues Democrats and Republicans are going at the Mueller report all wrong. Walter, thanks for joining us. In addition to Mueller's testimony, Democrats want his unredacted report. They've issued a subpoena to see it. They voted to hold Barr in contempt over it. But you argue they focus too much on process. You have this op-ed in the Washington Post titled, quote, "Democrats' obsession with redaction is obscuring the obvious. Trump committed high crime," and you say the president regularly and audaciously violated his oath and committed the most serious high crimes and misdemeanors. What high crimes and misdemeanors?
Well, I think his
interference with the investigation, his attempted interference, his direction to the White House counsel to have Mueller fired, his direction to the White House counsel to do a false memo to the file, denying that the president ordered him to do that, his effort to have Sessions unrecuse himself and prohibit them from investigating the 2016 election, leaving Mueller to look to the future. All of those are really well substantiated. This is the testimony of the president's White House counsel, the deputy White House counsel, the White House chief of staff, the White House counsel chief of staff. This is all established, and it's shocking when you read the report. Just to give you one example, Jake. Attorney General Barr says, well, maybe he wanted him fired because of conflicts of interest rather than for the corrupt motive of interfering with an investigation. Well, if you look at page 80 of Volume 2 of the Mueller report, you'll see that the alleged conflicts are just laughable. They're laughable. There's nothing to them. It's a straight-up case of obstruction, of which all of that is just one example. It's sort of overpowering when you read the report. And the problem I have with the Democrats' response is the insistence on seeing the redactions indicates that there's something more we need to learn. It looked to me like most of the redactions are initially appropriate redactions of various kinds. We have 93% of everything, and that should have been enough for them to say these are crimes most serious.
But Mueller did not reach the conclusion you did, or at least he didn't state that he did.
Well, I think when you read the report, I think Mueller reached the conclusion that I did. He is very careful to say, because it is departmental policy not to indict a president while he's sitting, and that the president cannot be indicted until he leaves office, we're preserving all of the evidence when memories are fresh and documents are available for that time. The president can be prosecuted at that time. He assembles all the evidence, and he says, because we can't indict him and he can't defend himself for another 2 years, when he could then go on trial if he loses, we think it's inappropriate to announce a conclusion. But the conclusion is obvious from the report. So I do think that is the misreading, the notion that we need something more to reach a conclusion about the president's actions. And remember, even if there was some reason why a president did not technically violate parts of Section 512, this interference with the administration of justice is grounds for the most serious response, instead of waiting around and talking about process and redactions.
So let me ask you also, because in your op-ed you also fault President Trump for what you call, quote, a failure to defend the country's electoral system from foreign attack, unquote. Now, Trump administration officials tell me and argue that the Pentagon, the National Counterterrorism Center, et cetera, they're all working hard to defend the country from attack, regardless of what President Trump says. And Trump himself often notes that this devastating attack in 2016 took place during the Obama presidency. Was he negligent as well?
Yes. There's no question, I think, that President Obama, one of the many things that happened because everybody in the world, including, I think, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, thought Hillary Clinton was going to win, and Obama did not want to appear to be, to be interfering. But in retrospect, he clearly failed to respond sufficiently. But it was the presidential campaign of Donald Trump that was clearly welcoming actions by the Russians. What the special counsel says, that they did not have proof beyond a reasonable doubt that there was an actual agreement between the Trump campaign and the Russians. So they found copious evidence of how the Trump campaign had welcomed it. And the president meeting with Vladimir Putin and not raising this right after the Mueller report comes out and details this, what Mueller calls a substantial, sustained, massive interference in our election. When the president meets with Vladimir Putin and doesn't raise it,
or he was talking on the phone with him, but yeah.
Right. When he talks with him on the phone and doesn't raise it, that is really a green light to the Russians to interfere in the 2020 election.
All right, Walter Dellinger, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it, sir.
Okay, thanks, Jake.
Mutiny or just some friendly help? Up next, the reason Senator Kirsten Gillibrand is getting money from people working for her 2020 presidential opponents. Stay with us.
Before he was president, he was a brand.
I'm really rich.
CNN investigates. Just how do President Trump and his family do business?
There's ordinary real estate selling, and then there's this.
Nothing is transparent. CNN Special Report, The Trump Family Business, tomorrow at 9.
I think I found my dream car.
It turns out they want me to start next month. She can stay with you to finish her senior year.
Things will be tight, but we can make this work.
Now.
Grandpa, what about your dream car?
Oh, this is my dream now.
Principal, we can help you plan for that.
Want a relaxing pedicure? Relaxing pedicure?
Call from
My feet get so
wireless
dry and cracked.
caller.
I need serious relief. That's why I use O'Keeffe's for healthy feet. Guaranteed relief for extremely dry, cracked feet. Thanks to O'Keeffe's, I got my feet back.
I've booked your shower, sir.
How far you travel is up to you. How comfortable you travel is up to us. Fly Emirates. Fly better.
At Panera, our salads are uniquely crafted with peak season berries, creamy avocado, and a dressing fit for a goddess. Come taste what a salad should be. And with Panera Catering, there's more to go around. Panera, food as it should be.
Fields of gold, acres of green, mountains of earth. The land is your canvas. Paint it with horsepower and solid steel. Purpose-built equipment for a job done right.
Exactly. Liberty Mutual customizes your car insurance, so you only pay for what you need.
Nice. But, what's up with your partner?
Oh, we just spend all day telling everyone how we customize car insurance because no two people are alike, so. Limu gets a little confused when he sees another bird that looks exactly like him. Yeah. He'll figure it out. Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
America, two parties, still, all these years later, there's 350 million people, and there's two parties. There's 15 genders, and there's two parties.
Colin Quinn, Red State, Blue State, Memorial Day at 9 on CNN.
To celebrate 25 years as an industry leader, Lumber Liquidators has 400 floors on sale. Take 25% off popular waterproof styles, or get 25% off select hardwood floors, plus special financing. Lumber Liquidators, beautiful floors for less.
Ready to break through your allergies? People everywhere are reaching for Allegra, the fastest non-drowsy allergy relief. It starts strong and stays strong for 24 hours. Get back to the moment with Allegra.
I was born to rule the Seven Kingdoms, and I will.
Winterfell is your grace. When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die.
There's only one wall that matters, and it is here.
Presidential candidate Beto O'Rourke, a CNN town hall, Tuesday night, 10 Eastern.
This is CNN Breaking News.
With some breaking news now, ATF headquarters has been evacuated after an employee opened a package with a liquid inside and immediately felt sick. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives sharing this photo on Twitter. One official telling CNN this was, quote, not the usual suspicious package, unquote. A hazardous materials team will head to the building soon. We will bring you more information on the story as it develops. In politics, a less than warm greeting for New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio today. Greeted by protesters outside the TV studio where he announced his bid for president today, the 23rd Democrat in the presidential race, and those protests coming from the police officers in his own city, with the Police Benevolent Association adding this message on Twitter, quote, "He can't run the city, he can't run the country." Let's talk about this with the panel. Karen Finney, we should note this group has been against de Blasio for years, so these protests are nothing new. But in a recent poll, 76% of New York City voters said they did not want de Blasio to run for president. How does he convince a national audience that it's a good idea?
Yeah, good question. I can't spin this one, Jake. I'm sorry. Let me do my best to try. I mean, I did work with Bill de Blasio on Hillary's Senate campaign, where he was the campaign manager. Look, I think he's going to have to. I've always been of the mind that Bill needs to shore up his record in New York if he were going to try to run for president, because, you know, Mayor Pete, part of his argument about why he can be the executive of this country is his record as mayor. That is the argument you would expect a mayor to be able to make. Obviously, having had such a rough start, he is going to have to find ways to get around that and figure out what is it that he can offer this country, what policy arguments can he make, and then show directly what results he's been able to deliver for New York. And as the data points out, that's going to be a tough road for him.
Well, Nia, he is attempting that. Take a listen to him making his pitch this morning to working voters.
I've actually done it. I've proven it can be done. We're doing things like guaranteed health care for all New Yorkers, including mental health care, the issue that Shirlane is focused on, paid sick leave, pre-K for all. These are things that change working people's lives for the better.
And he's trying to make the point that a lot of the items on the progressive agenda, health care, higher minimum wage, child care, these are things he's already accomplished.
That's right, and those are the issues that really made him a progressive star as he was entering the mayor's office. The idea was that New York City was going to be a lab for all of these issues around income inequality, around criminal justice. But you see, after years in office, his second term now, New Yorkers aren't really sold on him. Partly it is the infrastructure in New York, the subway in New York. But if you're Bill de Blasio, you see this huge field. You also see in in Joe Biden somebody that some people think is a bit of a weak front runner, right? And so the idea is, and I think a lot of these candidates feel this way, that if Joe Biden stumbles, then there is going to be somebody that Democratic voters look to sort of fill the void of Joe Biden. Joe Biden, of course, somebody who people think can appeal to all sorts of different voters, and the polling shows that. He polls well among African Americans, among white folks of all socioeconomic backgrounds. So the idea is, if you're Bill de Blasio, maybe you have a shot as well. And certainly if you look at somebody like Pete Buttigieg, who's at 7 or 8% in some of these early polls, if this guy, who's the mayor of a town that's about, 100,000 folks, if he can get a look from Democratic voters, and if you're Bill de Blasio, you're the mayor of 8 million people, then you figure, why not give it a shot?
Senator Kirsten Gillibrand is in Georgia today, Sarah. She's protesting the state's new law that bans abortions after a fetal heartbeat can be detected. Gillibrand's not seen her campaign take off yet. Could this be an issue that helps her rise from where she is in the polls, Sarah?
I mean, it's certainly possible. I think she has really been sort of the leading voice in the field since this, it's been a small time frame, but since we've been reckoning with this bill that they passed out of Alabama, and she's sort of been pressing others in the field to come along with her, and I think for the most part they have, but I certainly think she has been a strong voice on this issue, and it's worth pointing out that she's been a strong voice on this issue, not just now in the wake of the Alabama bill, but she has been talking about this in Congress as well. So this could be an opportunity for voters to give her, if not a second look, a first look. She's certainly someone who has been kind of nestled in this field and hasn't been one of the people who's been able to rise to the top yet. And I think you are seeing, for a bill that passed through the state legislature, essentially, with senators saying we don't even want this to become law in our state. We don't believe this is going to become law in our state. It has created a national conversation, and I think we've seen her capitalizing on that.
David Urban, let me ask you, as somebody who does not want big Democratic turnout in 2020. Are you worried at all?
Hey, that's an understatement, Jay.
Yeah. Are you worried at all about laws like these bills being passed in Ohio, Georgia, Alabama, et cetera, Missouri, that are, strict anti-abortion bans getting Democratic voters to the polls?
Well, look, I do think this bill is going to be this law is going to be struck down pretty quickly. I don't think that anybody thinks it's going to withstand any type of scrutiny. It's incredibly overbroad, so it's not going to get to the Supreme Court. I do think it does. It does obviously, to state the obvious there. It motivates the base. It energizes lots of Democrats in suburban Philadelphia and other places to turn out. And so, at some point, it is concerning. But the flip side of that is, the argument goes that you heard Christine Quinn on the Cuomo show the other night, and you heard the governor of Virginia make extremely inflammatory comments, which Republicans can kind of hear and want to run to the polls. So it's something that'll be a hotly contested issue.
But David, here's the thing, Jake. I mean, this is also an issue. It's not just Democrats and Republicans. I mean, what these bills are saying, if you cannot trust a woman to make her own decisions about her health care, how can you trust her to run a country or run a company? I mean, that's how women feel about this legislation. It's a fundamental assault on our basic freedom. And so I think it's going to be very mobilizing. I mean, 7 in 10 Americans believe that Roe v. Wade should remain law. It should not be overturned. That's going to be very mobilizing for the middle, not just for the far ends of the scope.
Karen, this was in Alabama. This isn't a national
But these bills are being passed. Bills like this are being passed all across the country. Just today, a similar one in Missouri. That's right. And the more it happens, and the more these rights are being eroded at the state level, the more aware people are becoming of how in danger we really are.
It's not going to be eroded. It's going to be struck down by the court.
Everyone stick around. We've got more to talk about. But right now, Mayor Pete Buttigieg campaigning in Chicago this afternoon, just miles away from one of the places he served as a Naval Reserve officer. And as CNN's Jeff Zeleny reports, Buttigieg often invokes his service in Afghanistan to try to defend his age and experience in the Democratic primary, and he uses it to attack President Trump.
There's one chapter of his life that Pete Buttigieg often turns to.
So somebody who served in Afghanistan.
When I went overseas, when I was packing my bags for Afghanistan.
The 37-year-old mayor of South Bend, Indiana, deploys his military service as both a sword and a shield. Whether taking questions about his experience or quieting anti-gay protesters, Afghanistan is often his answer.
That's one more reason why it might not be a bad idea to have somebody in the White House who actually served.
His time as an intelligence officer in the Naval Reserves and a 6-month deployment to Afghanistan makes his already gold-plated resume shine even brighter. Yet Buttigieg rarely talks about why he joined the service after graduating from Harvard and studying as a Rhodes Scholar. Turns out, it was 2008, and he was volunteering for the Barack Obama campaign in Iowa, where he said he saw many young people signing up for the Army or National Guard.
I might have dragged my feet on it forever if I hadn't had that experience in Iowa, and just realizing that some communities were almost emptying out their youth into the military, and some were barely serving at all.
Now he's one of 3 presidential candidates who served in America's longest wars in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Aloha!
Joining Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard and Congressman Seth Moulton. After 5 years of reserve duty, he deployed to Afghanistan in 2014, just as President Obama was announcing a troop withdrawal. Military records reviewed by CNN show Buttigieg was part of a unit assigned to identify and disrupt terrorist finance networks. It was largely a desk job at the Bagram Air Base, but he also worked as a driver and armed escort.
Look, it's not like I killed bin Laden, right? I don't want to overstate what my role was, but it certainly was something that was dangerous. People that I knew, unfortunately, were attacked.
Do you think you'd be able to make this run as credibly without this military service?
Well, I think at a moment when obviously people are looking for contrasts, it helps me demonstrate the difference between how I'm oriented and how the current president is.
Jason McCrae still remembers the day he met Buttigieg at their training in South Carolina. He didn't know the man assigned to be his battle buddy was also an Indiana mayor.
One of my early memories is he had an earbud in and he was learning a language. I think it was Dari. Certainly I don't remember other folks that were picking up a language at that point in time.
He was interested in Afghanistan and was studying and consuming everything about it.
Yeah, for sure.
A dozen people who served alongside Buttigieg in the reserves and in Afghanistan who spoke to CNN described him as mature and, yes, ambitious. But several said he was hardly alone on that front.
To go through a deployment in Afghanistan there's probably less dangerous ways to check the box.
McCrae and his wife Sue are watching their friends campaign from afar with interest.
When I first met Pete, it was just a wife going to say goodbye to my husband, and we just happened to meet a battle buddy.
So Mayor Buttigieg talks about Afghanistan pretty much every stop he makes, Jake, including here in Chicago when he was talking to the Chicago City Club earlier today. He said it is time for a new Afghanistan policy in the U.S., noting that people enlisting now were not even born on 9/11. But as for his own service, Jake, as I sat down with him today to talk about what led him to sign up back in 2009, he said he did not have public service in mind at that time. Of course, he ran shortly after that, but he noted this. He said military service is not always popular. You must serve if it is or if it isn't. Jake?
All right, Jeff Zeleny, thanks so much for that. Appreciate it. Tens of millions of dollars meant to help struggling American farmers instead reportedly went to Brazilian brothers being investigated by the Department of Justice, and that's the least of their legal problems. Stay with us.
Okay. YouTube viewers, I didn't mean to leave the leave the TV unmuted during the first commercial set, but when the news first came on, I was eating. I just had time to get started recording for you, but I'm going to keep recording now. But keep in mind, the reason I am showing you the news at all is to show you how soon we could leave this earth. And listen, I advise you during this time now, pause the video, watch the video I did a while back entitled Matthew 24, showing the exact chapter of Matthew 24 from my personal favorite Bible. Sorry, I did a video a while back titled Matthew 24, showing you nothing but the 24th chapter of Matthew. During this time, I advise you to pause this video and watch that one. Just go to YouTube, type in my name, BLAKE, space FANNIN, and type in Matthew 24. Thank you. Now pause the video and do that or whatever else you need or want to do. Thank you.
Blitzer. Up next on CNN. Closed captioning.
Okay. YouTube viewers, one more thing. Whenever I mute it or unmute it, whenever I unmute it and mute it, that means I think they could be coming back from break, and I think they are now.
American farmers hit by President Trump's trade war with China may actually be helping line the pockets of two Brazilian crooks. According to a new report today in the New York Daily News, the Trump administration gave a total of $62 million to a meatpacking company in Colorado. Its parent company is in Brazil, and its owners, two wealthy brothers who have spent time in jail, who have confessed to bribing top officials in their country. I want to bring in the reporter who broke this story, Chris Sommerfeld, a politics reporter for the New York Daily News. Chris, thanks for joining us. The money's supposed to go to American farmers. How does it end up in Brazil?
Well, essentially, you have a pot of money that the Trump administration has designated towards helping out farmers hurt by the administration's trade war. Now, as you said, the subsidiary in Colorado has been given this money in order to then forward the money to American farmers. Now, there's actually no proof showing what this Colorado subsidiary has done with the money once the Trump administration has handed it over. And considering who the owners are of this Colorado subsidiary, two brothers who have confessed to massive corruption schemes in their home country, can we take the administration at their word when they're saying that this money is coming to American farmers?
Right. And the Trump administration's Department of Agriculture wrote a check to the Batista Brothers Company in January for $22.3 million, you write in your story. And even after the Justice Department in this country began investigating their company for possible violations of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, in an unrelated matter, the Agriculture Department issued two more multi-million-dollar checks to this company?
Correct. In February and again earlier this month. Now, what the Agriculture Department is telling me is that this money from their vetting is ending up in American farmers' hands. But again, we have seen no proof that that is actually the case. And considering the corrupt history of JBS, there seems like we need, it warrants some scrutiny as to where this money is actually going.
Absolutely. Now, the president said this time around he might give an additional $15 billion to American farmers. Now, this money for farmers hurt by the tariffs, it's not by law just for Americans. It theoretically can go to foreign-owned companies that aren't hurting for money at all?
So that's where it gets a bit dicey. Now, if you look back what happened in November of last year, there was a Virginia-based company called Smithfield Foods. That is owned by a Chinese firm. At the time, several members of Congress were outraged at this, including Senator Chuck Grassley. And the payment actually ended up being reversed because of the foreign connection. Now, with JBS, the same outrage has not happened from Congress, and that is still an outstanding question that I'm trying to figure out in my reporting as to why this payment to JBS, which is way bigger than the Smithfield Foods payment, is being largely ignored by members of Congress.
And I'm told you just got a response from the Trump administration on your story. What's their explanation?
Their explanation is that they're giving this money to JBS, which they say are complying with their standards of paying, or rather funneling that money back into the American farm industry. They're saying that they're complying with the standards that they've set out. They're saying that from operating with them over months, they're doing a good job. But again, that's the administration's word. All we know is that $62 million has ended up in the hands of a Brazilian-owned company that's being run by two brothers who have confessed to corruption.
And no evidence that any of that money went to American farmers. Chris Sommerfeld, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Congrats on the scoop.
Thank you.
Attention Walmart shoppers, you're about to pay more. That's next.
How do you gauge the greatness of an SUV? Is it to carry cargo or to carry on a legacy? Its show of strength or its sign of intelligence? In crossing harsh terrain or breaking new ground? This is the Mercedes-Benz SUV family. Greatness comes in many forms. Visit your local Mercedes-Benz dealer for exceptional lease and financing offers. Mercedes-Benz, the best or nothing.
Arby's sells more euros than anywhere else in America. Partly because of this 2 for $6 deal, partly because of our unending passion for Greek flavors. But mostly the deal.
Arby's, we have the meat.
For sandwiches.
I have heart disease. Watch what I eat, take statins, but still struggle to lower my LDL bad cholesterol, which means a heart attack or stroke could strike without warning, pulling me away from everything that matters most. Because with high bad cholesterol, my risk of a heart attack or stroke is real. Repatha plus a statin seriously lowers bad cholesterol by 63% and significantly drops my risk of having a heart attack or stroke.
Do not take Repatha if you are allergic to it. Repatha can cause serious allergic reactions. Signs include trouble breathing or swallowing of the face. Most common side effects include runny nose, sore throat, common cold symptoms, flu or flu-like symptoms, back pain, high blood sugar, and redness, pain, or bruising at the injection site.
I won't let a heart attack or stroke come between me and everything I love. Neither should you. Tell your doctor to lower your LDL and reduce your risk with Repatha. Pay no more than $5 per month with Repatha.
YouTube viewers, just letting you know, I'm getting ready to take some testosterone. I'm getting ready to take some testosterone medicine that I'm on, and as you know, they're on commercial right now. So I'm gonna go ahead and take my testosterone medicine, but just so you know, you may be sitting here waiting a while because I may not be able to unmute my TV right when they come back, because I could be rubbing that in. So if I am, I advise and encourage you to take this time. I advise and encourage you to take this time and pause it and do anything you need to do at all, and I promise you, I'll come back and check it as soon as I can. But in the meantime, please be patient and like, share, and subscribe. Well, I'll fix it for you as soon as I can. Well. Would you send her to the news comes back on and only because I'm reporting the news for YouTube?
No, wait, it's news out.
Okay. I was able to get my grandpa to agree that I'll take that medicine when the news is off.
There's Walmart, a company caught in the middle of the president's trade war with China. Today, Walmart said it will raise prices, not saying on exactly which products, but executives did blame the tariffs imposed by President Trump on Chinese goods. And we're hearing story after story of suffering in Middle America from the tariffs, including one man who tells CNN's Miguel Marquez that these tariffs could put him out of business.
Maybe I could sell you a car.
Steve Gates sells cars. 9 dealerships, 3 states, nearly 700 employees. His family closing deals for 3 generations.
I would love to grow. I would love to add rooftops and people. I'm too scared right now.
Scared because the president's trade fight with China and the world taking a bite out of the automotive industry, slowing sales, crimping growth, creating uncertainty.
It just seems so unfair. I mean, I work so hard every day, and for the for politicians to dictate to me what my future is. It just seems wrong.
Nationwide, a firm that tracks job losses found that this year nearly 20,000 jobs in the automotive sector gone, with the threat of an additional 25% tariff on finished products hanging out there. Many more jobs on the line. The U.S. auto industry hit by tariffs and price increases for over a year now. First due to steel and aluminum tariffs in March 2018, then tariffs on Chinese-made car parts in July and again in September last year. Then last week, even higher tariffs imposed again on Chinese auto parts, among other materials. Here in Kentucky, it's not just car production and sales feeling the tariff pinch.
Nobody wins in a trade war. There's only consequences and casualties, and right now we're collateral damage.
Since 1999, Kentucky has seen exponential growth in global exports of its most famous beverage, bourbon. Not anymore. The EU and countries like China fighting back, aiming their own tariffs directly at the home state of Trump loyalist and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell.
I am not a fan of tariffs.
We just got numbers today for the first quarter of this year, and they're down 10% American whiskey and 20% to the EU, just in the first quarter.
20%.
Mm-hmm.
That hurts.
That hurts.
Now, there are some winners here, Jake. There are aluminum smelters in Kentucky. They've added some capacity and some jobs, but the question for Kentuckians who are the auto industry or the bourbon industry is all the pain they're suffering right now worth the gain? Back to you.
All right, Miguel Marquez in Lexington. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. The trick to getting a pardon from President Trump, a helpful tip. That's next.
At Panera.
Okay. YouTube viewers, I'm sorry. I'm sorry you've had to hear about my medicine, but one of my relatives wants it done right now. One of them's willing to let me wait. I do know that I need this, but I'd rather not do it right while I'm recording. It's a testosterone gel, and I'm just trying to let you all hear the news without interruptions from my family. I do apologize for that.
Maybe you should take that pen and use it to sign up with a different insurance company.
Yes. Yes. YouTube viewers, once again, I apologize for any and all interruptions. But listen, whenever you're waiting on anything, for instance, a commercial or an airplane flight or a taxi cab, or waiting in line at the Walmart checkout or any store's checkout, whenever you're waiting for anything, anytime, anywhere, that is a wonderful time to pray about anything or for anyone. If your life's wonderful and you don't have anything personal you need to pray about, that is a wonderful time to pray for the lost. But listen, whenever you pray for the lost, one thing that we definitely need to pray for is an increased desire to pray for the lost all over. Keep that in mind. Now, listen.
And you're now wondering how to get out of prison, you might want to think about writing a glowing book about President Trump, or writing an op-ed in which you call Robert Mueller a few bad names. In the past 24 hours, President Trump has issued 2 more presidential pardons to 2 more obvious political allies. One, former media mogul Conrad Black, who served 42 months in federal prison for defrauding his own company and its shareholders of $60 million, but who also wrote this book entitled Donald J. Trump, a President Like No Other. The other pardon recipient, Patrick Nolan, a former California state legislator who served time for corruption and who last year slammed the Mueller probe, saying investigators, quote, decide who they're going to prosecute and then hunt for a crime. Just the latest examples of President Trump passing out get-out-of-jail-free cards to those who say nice things about him, such as Trump supporter and former Sheriff Joe Arpaio, convicted of contempt of court in a case related to racial profiling, or conservative pundit Dinesh D'Souza, who pleaded guilty to illegal campaign donations, but once compared Trump to Abraham Lincoln. According to the Conservative Heritage Foundation, a purpose of pardon power is to, quote, temper justice with mercy in appropriate cases, and to do justice if new or mitigating evidence comes to bear on a person who may have been wrongfully convicted. Another purpose, according to the Heritage Foundation, is to ensure peace and tranquility in the land. Now, that would not seem to be how the pardon power is being exercised here. Now, of course, yes, past presidents have also issued some extremely questionable pardons. President George H.W. Bush pardoning 6 Reagan administration officials, including Defense Secretary Caspar Weinberger, related to the Iran-Contra scandal, or President Bill Clinton pardoning his half-brother Roger and fugitive financier Mark Rich, who was married to a big-time Clinton fundraiser. Those were pardons issued with a certain sense of shame, however, during the final days, if not final hours, of the Bush and Clinton administrations. But with this president, there is no apparent sense of shame and no blowback from his fellow Republicans. Now, perhaps President Trump is just laying bare the privilege that previous presidents have occasionally arguably abused for political reasons. Or perhaps that sense of shame that Bush and Clinton felt was at least important, and now it's gone, like so many other standards. Our coverage on CNN continues right now.